Welcome to Game Changer Live. Together, we inspire by shining lights on topics of coaching, positivity, mindset, and more. We go live on Wednesdays at 3:30 p.m. Pacific Standard Time. That's 6:30 Eastern Standard Time because live means the most unedited and authentic version of ourselves. What you see is what you get. And so let's get inspired. I am joined today by my guest, Karen Rudolph. Karen is a master at peaceful thriving. She's a 2 times international best-selling author, speaker, a spiritual healer, a nurse, a coach, and if I continued listing on her achievements, we'd never actually get to the episode. She specializes in heart based mind shift coaching and has created a model for well being and wellness in mind, body, heart, and spirit. And Karen, that's my introduction of you, but I would love to know from you, in your words, um, what are you as a coach?
I'm a stand for everyone. I'm a stand for everybody getting their own sense of who they are and personal freedom. So for me, it's like looking at I put a W before the whole of a person. So when I'm coaching somebody, I like to think more of being a strategist than a coach because I like to empower others to empower themselves. So I'm not sitting here telling you what to do and how to do it. I'll be your journey guide, but
Yeah.
so,
Well, that's awesome. So, and I know that you have a very specific group of people that tend to gravitate towards you. Tell us in our audience who might be listening that would really need to pay attention or really benefit from paying attention to what you have to talk about today.
well, I'm hired by successful women leaders, and it doesn't discount men because I get asked by men all the time. My focus is with successful women leaders who are looking to support themselves, building their self confidence as they optimize their communications and feel more powerful in the space of effective speaking so they can not only empower themselves but empower the teams and the people around them. So this way, it gives them a little more sense of freedom and they can serve their clients a lot better. So,
Awesome.
yeah.
That's awesome. And um and so you have a story to tell us about something that recently happened to you, but I want to go back into the past a little bit first, because I want to set the stage for how through those lessons kind of coming back to you. So you mention going through and getting a deeper communication training that really you had to focus on regaining communication. Can you take us through that time in your life and why that was important for you?
Yeah, it was really important for me back after a 29-year marriage and small children later. Um, I was a mouse. I was a people pleaser. I had no voice. I was very introverted. I mean, I would never look anybody in the eye. There's no way on earth I would have been doing this here today, back all those years ago. And my former husband wanted to take the the children away, and all of a sudden it was like Mama Bear came out, and I was like, oh, over my dead body, but I didn't know how to communicate, and I knew I had to go before the judge and not just go before the judge, but it made me stop and pause that I am my children's first advocate. And how can I be an advocate for them if I couldn't even be an advocate for myself? So I promised myself I would never, ever again be out of communication with anybody, let alone myself. So I delved into communication courses and I've just been plowing through it ever since. And I coached a group in India for close to a year and over Zoom, I mean, over Skype. I'm aging myself now over Skype. And it was just magical. So it just was the beginning of many magical moments.
Yeah. And it sounds like there was a kind of a confidence. You mentioned being a mouse, that there was kind of a confidence booster there. How do you gain self-confidence?
How do you gain self-confidence? Well, practice. Practice makes perfection in a sense. So for me, well, knowing yourself is key, for me in any situation. So building confidence, it begins looking in the inside, from the inside out. And it's like driving a car. I mean, if you imagine yourself going back in time and remembering, it was like, do I put the key in? Do I do the mirror? Do I, and you got your dad or your mom sitting next to you and you feel like a nervous wreck and you're like, now you get in the car, you don't think about it. You just do it. So it becomes root after a while. The more you practice, most people think that they're communicating, but if I ask them to look up a word, and that's one of the things that I ask my clients to do, it's in my contract, you have to get a dictionary because I will call you out. Because word creates reality, right? So, yeah. And it
Yeah.
builds confidence and self-esteem. So, yeah, absolutely.
When we were talking, you also mentioned that during that time, that early time where you were learning to communicate, you also learned about creating a team and the importance of creating a team. Tell us a little bit about that.
Well, back in the day, we have teams all around us. Our families are our first team, right? And we have partners and so on and so forth. And teachers were part of my team and educating, supporting my kids. And so we always have teams around us. And then later on, after, going through the communication portion where I had to go before a judge, I created a team with my attorney and my paralegal. That was like one of my first teams. And then shortly after that, I hired a coach. And I chose to invest in myself. And that was my first big team effort because I had no idea what was up and down, where I was going, what was next for me. I had these big dreams. And actually, my girlfriend said to me, "What's your dream?" And I'm like, "What's that?" Like what? A dream? Like I had no clue what a dream was. I had to literally look it up in the dictionary and I cried my eyes out. And it's probably why I make everybody look words up today, because I don't want to be alone in that space. But it's very powerful because we think we know what we're saying, but a lot of times we give it a different meaning because of our experiences. So.
It's lovely. When we're gonna get into the more recent story here in a second, I just want to segue a little bit, if that's okay, and say I oftentimes see these life lessons kind of popping back up and kind of repeating themselves over and over until I get it right. And even though you learn to not check the mirror in your analogy, every once in a while it benefits you to just make sure that the mirror is pointed in the right direction, right? And I think that that's a great analogy to talk about this next area, and that is that you found yourself in a foreign country and something happened. I want you to tell us in your words what happened.
Yeah, I live in Sarasota, Florida, and I'm very spiritual. I wanted to get out more and meet some people, so I decided to join a retreat and go down there. And day two of the trip, I have horses here in Sarasota, and I do a lot of trauma work alongside of them. So I'm no stranger to horses. And one of my very favorite things to do is riding along the beach, and the beaches down in Costa Rica are absolutely breathtaking. And I was really excited to do it. But last minute, my intuition was like, don't go. And I usually listen to my inner guidance. And I gave my power away to the lead um, person who was running the retreat. And I allowed her to guilt me into going on this horse beach ride. And basically, she was telling me, "Oh, we've got a horse for you, and they're waiting for you, and everybody wants you to be part of the team," and on and on and on. All right, I'll go. Well, sure enough, I get on my horse, and everybody takes off. And my horse starts taking off, and then he starts clobbering along, and like I said, I was not pushing it at the time because I have horses, and I really sensed the horse's feet were sore. So when the guide came back to ask me, like, what's up? I said, there's something wrong with your horse's feet. I mean, I'm an observer. And the horse kept moving away from the water, plus there's stones all over the beach. And he kept moving away from the water. And the guide says, "Well, yeah, he wears shoes all the time, and his shoes keep getting thrown off." And I'm thinking to myself, well, common sense, the horses' hooves are like our nails. If you keep them in water, they're going to get soggy, and of course, it's not going to hold. And when you put salt on an open wound, right, it's very painful. So this particular horse was doing really fine. We walked the rest of the way. I was absolutely fine with that. I was in no hurry, no rush. I was taking in the sights and the beauty in the moment. And all of a sudden we get with the rest of the pack, and horses are pack animals. So he's all attentive and wanting to go with the rest of the pack, and they go to take off. And right before he takes off, the wave hits him because he's no longer paying attention. And as the wave hits his back feet, I'm getting chills just thinking about it. As the wave hits his back hooves, which are now sore, he spins around to look at what hit his back. And I went, not my most graceful moment, but I went flying off probably about 6 feet in the air, landed on my butt. And it was surreal after that because I just remember looking at my feet and the waves like pounding at my feet. And I'm like, shoot, man, I can't move my feet. This isn't good. And it was just the shock of it. And I'm looking over at the group who had already been down, and I see one of the girls like in slow motion, like calling down the beach. And I look at her when she gets to me, and I'm like, you were on a horse. Why didn't you ride a horse? But you don't think in the moment. So there's got to be a little comic relief in it. I knew I couldn't get up. I couldn't put weight on either one of my feet, and they carried me over to the car. They, both of them on the shoulders, the guide and the scow. And it was a 2-hour ride to the nearest hospital over bumpy roads. And I knew I had broken my hip at that point, and my left femur. And I had, by the time I went to the emergency room and took x-rays and everything else, I had broken the femur, which was excruciatingly painful. I had fractured my right hip, and I had compressed my back, the discs in my back. So it wasn't a fun time, to say the least. And as you said, I don't speak Spanish. So it made it very interesting. Thank goodness my surgeon spoke English, but he was probably the only one. And of course, surgeons, you see them, they leave. However, he was amazing. I have to say, he was really there for me. So,
Wow. So
yeah.
here you are in a foreign country. You don't speak the language. You're by yourself, and you have to have surgery. How did you deal with that stress?
Well, it's a choice, right? Yeah, I had a choice. I could deal with it and I can get into a pity party, or I could choose to say, okay, this is what is, and what are my next best steps? So after the surgery, which was the next day, the pain was really excruciating. And I am not one to be popping pills, and I do not want to be unconscious. I wanted to be conscious of how I was going to get myself home. So I teach breathing techniques as well, and it works. When you do the work works. And I was breathing my way through most of the pain. I would take one minimal pain pill, minimal. I mean, it wasn't like, a big hard narcotic kind of thing. It was a lower end one. And I would alternate it with a Tylenol and breathing. As long as I didn't have to move, I was fine. It was like if I had to move from side to side, it was a lesson in humility too, because I couldn't do anything for myself.
Yeah.
So
And and you were actually going to be on the episode before your Costa Rica trip, and we moved it out to after your Costa Rica trip, and then again out because of the recovery. And so this has been an episode in the making, right? Um, which is it is what it's meant to be, because I think that that taught you the same life lessons that you learned early on in your life, right? About communication and the need to create a team for yourself. So tell us a little bit about that.
yeah, absolutely. I immediately got into action. I knew the doctor was not going to release me, and it was costing me cash money every day that I was there. They didn't take credit cards. Um, excuse me, they did take credit cards. However, they preferred it paid like every 3 days, and it was adding up. And I called the consulate, so I started creating a team there. Like, what do I do? Where do I go? So asking questions. And when I was getting a lot of closed doors, I finally called friends and I said, my focus is on healing right now. I would like the support. I need the support. How might you help me? And then I remembered a friend of mine who was doing a program with me years ago. He worked for Angel Flight. So I immediately reached out to him. He started creating a team for me to see how ways and means of getting home. An air flight would have cost anyway, to be airlifted was anywhere from $23,000 to $43,000. I knew I couldn't do that. So I just started asking a lot of questions, but I released it all to the team. And I said, you deal with that. Thank you so much. I love you all. That I'm going to focus on my healing. My body's healing itself. And I just kept affirming it over and over and over again. My goal was to walk out of the hospital. Did I walk out? Well, I had my walker. It was sort of semi trip, but at least I was upright. And I finally became my own advocate because there was only one flight out. And I called Delta. I had gone in on Delta. Delta said, with a wheelchair, they'll only take you to the door, but you got to walk. I can't walk. I couldn't put my feet in front of one foot in front of the other. And so um, I called American Airlines and they were the bomb. I said to them, these are my needs, clear, concise communication. This is what I need. This is what I want. This is what I'm looking for. You only have one seat left on first class. I'm willing to pay the price. How might it happen? Because if I waited for the nurse that they wanted me to bring from the States down there to come back with me and pay her first class ticket on top of it so she could take my blood pressure and pop a pill on the flight, it didn't make sense to me. I said, I don't need that. What I need is a wheelchair from the ground to pass customs back to transportation. And I need to be lifted onto the seat in the airplane. What can you do for me? And they were like, no problem. They stayed with me for the plane flight was delayed an hour. They had someone stay with me for 5 hours. And you make the best of the situation. So I pulled out my Spanish app and I said, okay, como se dice? And he was wanting to learn English. So for 5 hours, we played. You let go of the significance, and you make
Yeah.
it work.
And you found a voice and you
Yeah,
advocated for yourself to get a team together at the
absolutely.
last minute for this trip home.
Yeah.
Um, what was the most difficult part of pulling it together in the midst of all that pain?
Um, well, I had coordinated everybody. I think the most difficult was when things were falling apart. Like anything else in life, you have the best intentions, you have the best people, and then something happens, someone drops the ball, it doesn't work. I had American Express medical team as part of my team members, and they were rocking out, and I didn't even pay for American Express, but because I had an American Express card, they stepped up. However, I had to go through their medical team and get clearance to fly for their medical team as well as my surgeon and so on and so forth. So it made it a little more challenging because there were so many spoons in the pot, so to speak. You know,
It kind of strikes me
yeah.
that you also kind of created a culture of collaboration within your team, that you had all of these different moving parts that you kind of had to wrangle and get together. And I know that that's part of what you work on with your clients. So tell us a little bit more about fostering that kind of culture of collaboration.
Well, collaboration is huge for me. It's one of my core values, actually. And what I like to do is create clear expectations. So there's no like, where are we kind of thing, right? So open communication. Everybody deserves a voice. I want to hear from everybody. Um, Provide feedback. What's working, what's not working. Create a sense of ownership and gratitude, right? Appreciation. Everybody wants to be heard and appreciated, and knowing that about human nature, it makes it easier for me to be able to collaborate and create accountability in that space. And then celebrate. We forget to celebrate. So when I worked for the Jacksonville Sheriff's Department, there was disharmony in both factions of the technology aspect of it. And it's sort of like CNSI and NCIS. And they were like, don't ask them because it's like real. And I was like, when they started telling me what was going on, I was like, holy crap. No wonder they're stressed out. They have little to no social life. Most of them are divorced, they're thin, gaunt, and they're working these long, incredible hours. And of course, the tech department was not happy because they weren't getting their needs met because the guys were out in the field all the time. So we just eliminated it down to one word with the boss. It took him probably a couple of weeks to get it down pat because he wrote a dissertation and I made him get to one word. And the word was harmony is what he wanted in the team. And by the time I left, we created harmony between the two teams with play, with clear communication. I came in with a bucket full of toys and they looked at me like, because there's so much significance in
Grizzled detectives and a bucket of toys.
yeah,
Just
right. But they played, they were smiling, they were laughing, they let their guards down, and I kicked the boss out. So they really got to like be themselves. And it was mandatory. And there was one gentleman from the tech department who sat with the body language, which is a form of communication the whole time. And he's like, I've been here 35 years and you can't teach me anything new. And I went, okay, but you have to be here. Thanks for sharing. And I walked away and he was like, went to go throw him a ball, the body language, the whole bit, moved out. The second day, he was front and center in the auditorium, and he came up to me afterwards. He's like, Karen, I've never experienced anything like that. Because I listen. I listen to what's missing, wanted, and needed constantly. When I was down in South Africa, the same thing for the education department, school systems down there. The teachers don't have tools, and it was like, how are we going to teach it? So the next year I went back and I gave them tools. So if we don't have tools, we beat ourselves up, we get frustrated, we don't know what we don't know until we know it, right? Or until somebody teaches us that. So that's what I like to do. And that's part of the collaboration and having other people be accountable for who they say they want to be is key.
yeah, so I just want to point out, yes, you did hear. This is a woman who went to Costa Rica. She's gone to South Africa. She's worked in India. Like this, Karen, you've been everywhere.
Not everywhere yet.
Well, there's always something. So tell us about what's on the horizon for you. What are you working on now? And how is your healing journey going?
Thank you for asking. My healing, because my mindset, right? It's, and well, let me reframe it because I come from a space, and I know there's a lot of mindset coaches out there. I like to call it mind shifting because when we're set into this one pattern of thinking, in at least in my world, right? If I'm having everybody look up words, then when you're set in one thing. So we have so many patterns and we have so many habits that become habitual. And until we address that, it's going to be more of the same, like hamster wheel effect. So for me, it's really getting out there and spreading the word. Like personal freedom is pretty much what we all want. We all want to be, if you get it down to one thing, it's love. It begins with self. It begins with, so for me, I've got a new book out on the horizons coming out as a result of Costa Rica. I was just approached last week to speak in front of on a spiritual conference in front of 600,000 people in India. And without skipping a beat, I said yes. And I'm thinking, wow, Karen, like years ago, you'd be hiding under a rock. But then I had to remind myself, it's not 600,000 people I'm speaking to. If we're all one, which I believe we are, I'm speaking in one person, one community. And, as a spiritual healer, minister, support, I want to believe that love is going to be the driving force, that when you get to know yourself, you fall in love with who you are and have the possibility of looking not just others in the eye, but looking at yourself in the eye of the mirror and saying, I did okay. I'm okay.
Yeah. Oh gosh. Well, following you on social media is how we met, and we started communicating on there. But for the audience, like, what are the best ways to reach out to you to get in touch for further information, to find that book when it comes out?
Yeah,
Tell us about that.
absolutely. Well, social media, I'm plastered all over social media. So Facebook, obviously, under Karen Rudolf, Rudolf. My website is www.tranquil, TranquilSOUL, KarenUtions, or Karen@tranquilsolutions.com. Email is the best way to get a hold of me. Or yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, and we will be posting 3 links in our comments after this video goes live. Um, and if you had to distill everything that you talked about today, or if you wanted to leave us with one message before we go today, what would that be?
Whoa. After my Costa Rica trip, I really am present to how precious time is. Time you can never, ever, ever get back. So something can change your life in an instant. Obviously, it changed mine. And thank goodness I'm here to talk about it. But invest in you. Save your time. We're not meant to do life alone. So if you're willing to see the wisdom, or if you are willing to, or if you are seeing the wisdom in that, then perhaps you'll reach out and get support, create your team, because it's there to support you, move you forward.
Awesome. Thank you so much for being part of our show today, Karen. And thank you for watching us today. I invite you to do 2 simple actions to help promote this video and help inspire more people by getting this message out. And that is to subscribe to the channel and to hit the like button for this video specifically. If you want to go the extra mile, we would love to see what inspired you about our presentation today. And tune in next week at 3:30 p.m. Pacific Standard Time at 6:30 Eastern Standard Time live for more topics that inspire. I'll see you then. Thank you.